this here my flex bolt track saw. This is the first track saw that I ever purchased. I purchased this because I was doing all of my cuts on a small job site saw. I had I believe it's a Ryobi job site saw, and I found myself at times trying to cut a piece of 4x8 plywood on there. Obviously, we know how unsafe that is. And so after doing a little bit of research, you know, obviously I didn't feel like I had the space for a full cabinet saw, nor was I convinced that I was far enough along with my woodworking hobby that that would be a wise purchase. So upon further research, you know, oftentimes, you know, you can go to your, say, Home Depot or Lowe's, and they'll cut down a 4x8 sheet of plywood for you at minimal cost. Oftentimes, when I would go to my local Home Depot, the panel saw was always down for one reason or another, or, you know, they just weren't able to accommodate making the cuts. So I would bring this whole 4x8 sheet of plywood home, and then, you know, you'd see me trying to finagle this with a job site table saw. For safety's sake, I did research and I learned about getting a track saw. The reason why I went with this particular model was because basically with DeWalt, it was cheaper than the Festool, and because I was more familiar with the DeWalt brand and, you know, having other DeWalt tools, I was like, well, then I can have kind of like this whole universal setup. So I went with the DeWalt track saw, and I'm using it. Everything's going fine, great. And then I ran into one issue. It wasn't the performance for me, because I'm not a professional by any means. The issue that I ran into with this track saw was when I decided I wanted to use something like this. This is what you call a parallel guide, and what this gives you the ability to do. So this right here made it safer for me to cut down bigger pieces of plywood, but it made it more cumbersome and more difficult to get accurate, repeatable cuts that was still best done on a table saw. So I had invested in this track saw because it was the cheapest one, and, you know, it had this cool feature where you can run the track saw up one side of the rail and down the other. It's basically an ambidextrous rail. I saw that as a beneficial feature. So what this track saw system does not come with is the ability to be able to attach to third-party devices like this TSO parallel guide, which gives me the ability with this particular one to cut what is this here? I don't know what the exact size it's saying here. Is that 90? Anyways, whatever this length is, I'll have to look it up. I'll put the length down in the description area. But basically, to cut, you know, at various sizes, right? This is, I believe, the smallest one. Here's the next step up, or the next size up. And then finally, the largest size, which gives you the ability to cut a full 4x8 sheet of plywood. So what do parallel guides do? This is not supposed to be about the parallel guides. I'll probably do another little video about that. It's about this track saw. These parallel guides give me to cut, let's say, from a 3-inch piece to a 12-inch piece, you know, the exact same size. This gives me the ability to cut up to, let's say, a 20-something inch piece. And this one here gives me the ability to cut up to a 48-inch piece of material the exact same size. It's reproducible by way of this type of registration system, because this area here affixes to the rail, and then when you push it up against your material, whatever you dial in here, that's the size of your piece that you're going to cut off. And since it's fixed, and it's fixed to the rail itself, it actually is going to give you that same size. Now, obviously, it doesn't work with just one piece. There's actually a set. All of these come in a, well, they don't, you purchase them in a set. And so, this one here has a twin, this one has a twin, and the other one has a twin, so that you can get the accurate measurement on each side to cut your stock in a uniform way. It's very similar to like if you're using a regular table saw and you set the fence to 10 inches, everything you run through that blade is going to be 10 inches wide, based upon the setting of the actual table saw fence. With a track saw, you would measure out, say 10 inches, and then you would put your track on your marks, because you would measure 10 inches on both sides of your material, and then you would put your track on those marks, and you would cut your piece. And then when you would come back to measure another 10 inches, you may be a little strong of that 10-inch mark or a little shy of that 10-inch mark, because perfection is, something that we're all trying to achieve, but none of us have attained. And as a result, what you'll end up with is one piece that may be exactly 10 inches, the next piece may be just shy of 10 inches, and the third piece may be just, larger than 10 inches. And then when you go to put this device or this whatever it is that you're building together, it's not square. It's not square because those pieces are not exactly the same. And that's the issue that I ran into with my track saw. Not being able to get perfectly accurate, repeatable cuts. So after further research and digging, I ended up coming to realize that the Festool, the Makita, even the Mafel and the Bosch, they all have the ability to attach to parallel guide systems. So I went ahead and I purchased for myself the Makita 18-volt track saw with rails, so that I can use the parallel guide system in order to be able to get repeatable cuts. I still don't have a big job site type table saw. I have two small, well, I still don't have a cabinet saw. That's what it is. I don't have a cabinet saw. I have two small job site table saws that I use, and using this method with the actual track saw just makes it safer for me working alone, being able to cut pieces of wood down to whatever size that I need them to be. These track saws are what inspired me to build this MFT table, to be able to make a product or make a project that is square, that looks good, and that functions in the way that you hope it to function. What I like about track saws, in my opinion, they're a lot less intimidating than using a table saw. You actually take the tool to the work. You don't have to worry about lifting up a huge piece of plywood or material and kind of balancing it on a small job site saw. Obviously, if you have a cabinet saw, that's going to be ideal. But even still, if you have a big cabinet saw and you're working with a big 4x8 sheet of plywood, it's still not safe to pick that up and try to run that through a blade. It's going to be hard to get the accuracy unless you have some kind of industrial setup that allows you to put a whole 4x8 sheet of plywood on it and run it through with some kind of slide system. this is still going to be your best method to cut things down with this. And then, you know, once you cut that 4x8 sheet of plywood down to a more manageable size, then take that to the table saw. I have that functionality now with, you know, the combination of, you know, my track saws, and then also now with my small job site table saw to be able to you know, do more repeatable smaller cuts. I can use that. But I did want to, you know, like when I made this table, each side here, you know, is probably, I don't know, let's measure it up. Each side is almost just over 16 inches, right? About 16 and a half inches tall, right? And so in order for me to get an accurate cut of this 16 and a half inches, you know, obviously I could run that through a small job site table saw, but what I was able to do was cut those pieces out with my track saw with the parallel guide system, and it gave me accurate cuts, which did not require me to use a table saw, because obviously with the table saw as well, I would still need to have, you know, an in-feed and an out-feed table to manage like a piece that, you know, this whole piece is like 8 foot long, you know, 96 inches for this whole table here, right? So I'm running this whole piece through a table saw, and if I don't have somebody on the other side of that job site saw to catch it, then, you know, or have an out-feed table, then I could get into some trouble there. So with this, especially with my MFT that I built, I can lay a full sheet of plywood on top of here, and I can use my track saw, cut off one edge to, you know, square it up, and then I can use the registration of the parallel guides in line with the fence to actually be able to trim down or cut my pieces to the same width, so that I could get a better end result with the product. As far as like, if I'm talking about power and, you know, battery life and all of these types of things, the way that, because I'm not some kind of production shop, for me personally being just, you know, a DIY type person, I've not had any issue with the power on either one of these saws or the actual you know, the battery life. It's been perfectly fine for me, but I'm doing smaller projects. I'm not, you know, I'm not producing stuff all the time every day. For probably your regular person that's not into this kind of hobby, you know, these are probably expensive to go out and buy just to make one weekend project. You can probably get by with a straight edge and a regular circular saw here if you wanted to. But as you know, as I said, you know, I've been building small things here and there for years. You know, just little, you know, like a little, I built a rack to put storage totes on, and just little things, little corner cabinets that didn't look very good at all. But as I was building those things, I was trying to learn how to you know, get better at the craft, and that led to research, and that research led to, you know, me understanding that, you know, having a good quality tool can really take a lot of the guesswork out of your work, and it can really help you to be able to produce the end result that you're looking for, something that looks a little bit more professional, something that you would be proud to display to, you know, friends and family. I mean, what's the point of going out and buying a piece of wood and butchering it up, and then, you know, you just made it to basically throw out in the trash? That doesn't make much sense. So then you start to understand that, you know, purchasing of certain tools and giving yourself, empowering yourself to be able to do these things on your own, and to be able to do them in a repeatable way, so that you can actually get the results that you expect and hope to get, then it kind of expands your mind, and it puts you in a position where it's like, okay, now I want to try something a little bit more technical. You know, for me, I remember when I threw together my first workbench, I just, you know, kind of, I didn't really think about how big it was going to be. I didn't think about the functionality. I just knew I wanted the workbench. I wanted it to be sturdy, and I wanted it to be able to roll around. So I bought some casters. I bought you know, 4x4s, and I made the legs out of the 4x4s, and I used 2x6s or something for the top, and I just threw that together. I just, you know, screwed it together in a way that made sense to me, and it worked. It did what I needed to do. And then when I wanted to use my table saw with it, I actually just took a few 2x4s and a nail gun and nailed on a little section to set the table saw to make the table, you know, have an outfeed. And that worked. And then, as you know, the more I started to pour into making things, the more I started to say, I want to be able to do this new thing or that other thing. And so it's like, you know, I want something to hold my work. And then you learn about dog holes and being able to fasten work down to a flat surface so that you can construct things. And that's what led me to building the table. And then it's like, oh, you need a fence. So then you get a fence. And, you know, all of these things are kind of married together. And you can throw as much money at anything that you want to do on this earth. I just so happen to have thrown it into, you know, these building materials because, you know, it fascinates me. Not quite sure if maybe I gave any insight into, you know, owning a track saw. They can be pricey, but they're very useful, and something that there still is no parallel guide system to date for this particular track saw. However, for my MFT, I was looking to add on a function where I can actually lift my track saw track up out of the way to be able to easily put wood underneath it. And there's a company called Dashboard that actually makes an accessory that will work with the DeWalt track saw, at least for just basic cross cuts. It's not going to do anything for you in regards to repeatable cuts. That's still something that you're going to have to get either a Makita, Festool, Bosch, or Mafel in order to get those repeatable cuts with a track saw. So just know that that's something, if you go away with anything from this video, just understand what you're going to get in the DeWalt. You're going to get, you know, for me, it's worked well. It does well as far as, you know, I know people talk about cut quality and so on and so forth. I can't really compare the cut quality between the two because this needs a new blade. I was actually cutting with this at one point in time, and I had the depth a little bit too low, and it actually, you know, cut into some concrete. So the blade on this is not phenomenal anymore. It actually creates quite a bit of tear out. So it's difficult to compare the two. This one has a blade that's only been used on plywood, and this one accidentally, you know, touched some concrete, and that being the case, it kind of dulled up the blade. And so when I cut with this, there's a lot of splinter and a lot of tear out. So I'll still use this for like rough cutting, and I will eventually get another blade, and when I do, then I can do a more accurate comparison between the two. Track saws are pretty cool to me overall, and if I ever am blessed with the money to, you know, I would like to get the Festool track saw, actually both of them, the 75 and the 55, just to be able to compare the difference and, you know, and see, you know, which one I really like. I did eventually buy a Festool vacuum to use with my little tools or whatever. So yeah, I mean, if you're in the market for buying a track saw, what would I say? For straight cuts, for straight accurate cuts, I think a track saw is super useful. It's easier to stow away as opposed to a cabinet saw. And as far as a job site saw, even though a job site saw can be, you know, fairly easy to store, you're not gonna, it's still gonna require, you know, some kind of outfeed table, and you're going to have a limitation on the sizes that you can cut with a job site saw. My job site saw, I have two of them. They cut up to 24 and 24.5 inches, I believe, respectively. Whereas with this, I can go as wide as I want to go because I simply lay the track down on the material and make the cut. So for that reason, if you find yourself ever needing to make cuts like that, this is a very useful tool. It's significantly more expensive than just a basic circular saw, but you could get away with using a circular saw with a fairly inexpensive straight edge and get similar results. Maybe not the same, but similar results. And if you're not doing something that you really require a high degree of accuracy with, then that's probably the way to go. But for myself, as I'm continuing to grow in this hobby, and it just really it just challenges me to want to do better, to learn better, to learn more. This was the method that I chose, was to go with a actual track saw with the rail system. And I do not regret my purchase. I don't regret purchasing either one of these, even though this particular track saw did not have the parallel guide system. Now, armed with the information that I have now, just being 100% honest, with the amount of money I've spent on both of these, I probably would have just bought the Festool and just went with that one, because then you're kind of like, I'm not saying that the Festool is better than the Makita or better than the DeWalt, but it would have gave me the ability to have the parallel guide system to be able to get repeatable cuts. It would have gave me, definitely superior dust collection over this particular saw, I'm thinking. But when you start talking about tools working together, what I rate on this DeWalt, I like the fact that it has a proprietary connection. I don't like that it has a proprietary connection because it excludes you from other areas of the market. But what I do like is that it does work. When I bring in my, let's see here, when I bring in this dust extractor here, this Flex Volt dust extractor, the attachment hose that comes with this device fits on here, and I'm good to go. This is what I like about this DeWalt. Now, it may not be considered as much of a precision cabinet making tool as maybe a Makita or definitely the Festool, but I like this kind of attention to detail. The fact that I am able to attach this dust extraction to the tool and do the job that I need to do. Now, with this particular thing, you need special equipment to attach this. This so far, I did not buy the vacuum or whatever, because that's a whole nother cost. Because now think about it. Let me just give a little bit more information than I was expecting to give. Okay, so this is the Flex Volt system vacuum. It runs off of the same battery as the track saw, right? This also has a dongle, like a little, what do you call it? Like a, I don't know, a little button. Let me see, I don't know where I put it. Neither here nor there. There's a little button on a little Velcro strap that you could push to turn this on wirelessly, right? So you could actually strap it to the handle, you could strap it to your wrist, and you can actually turn this vacuum on and off wirelessly. So that gives you the ability to be able to save battery. You can cut with this anywhere. Now, Makita makes a wireless vacuum as well. However, this saw, if you buy it with the Bluetooth functionality, costs $429, saw with no batteries and no track. I bought this saw for less than that, and it came with both the batteries. It was a kit, and it does not have the ability to use the Bluetooth wireless system. Now, I could use this with this, but the problem is it doesn't fit. it's not, this is not built for this, so I gotta buy all kinds of accessories and dongles to attach this, you know, this dust extractor to this. And then obviously you see the obvious deal here. You've got a FlexVolt battery and 2 Makita batteries versus 1 battery system with the FlexVolt tool. So getting back to what I said, I would have chose the Festool because the Festool, number one, you can go battery operated with the Festool, and even though their dust extractor is not wireless, it does have a wireless capability to where when you turn on that wireless, that battery operated track saw, it actually kicks on the vacuum, and when the saw stops, it stops. Makita offers, as I said, it offers a track saw that does a similar thing, but it has a little fob, I believe, you know, like a USB type fob that has to go into the tool and then into the vacuum for it to be able to communicate. And I believe that's extra cost for the tool as well. So you have to pay a higher premium for the track saw itself. And then, you know, you have to get the vacuum. And then I'm not convinced, based upon my small amount of research, I don't believe that the dust extraction vacuum that does not have as high a CFM as this particular model here, that's also battery operated, right? I don't believe it even directly connects into this. I believe that you'll have to have some kind of a, there's probably a Makita branded one, you know, that will enable you to be able to plug in here. So, I mean, what's the point of having a circular, you know, a track saw and having a dust port and then going to get a Makita dust extractor and it doesn't just plug in natively? And then who cares if it plugs in if you have to go over there and push the button to turn it on, right? To me, that kind of takes away a little bit of the smoothness of the operation. You can either get a wired Festool, and obviously it has the wire that plugs into their dust extractor, so when you turn on the tool, it actually turns on the vacuum to give you that that dust extraction. And obviously with the DeWalt, they offer the little dongle that you can use so that you can turn on the vacuum wirelessly as well. So as I said, as a cohesive system, you know, with attachments, the Festool, you know, I can use the Festool. It will actually plug into here, I believe. Let me just see. I don't know if it'll plug into the DeWalt. Let me just see. All right. So yeah, so I can use this, and this is how it would work on the Festool, where it just kind of plugs in. But think about it here. I have no way to turn on my Festool vacuum unless I go over there and plug it in. Whereas if this was a battery operated Festool, or if this was a corded Festool, you know, it would operate as soon as I pull the trigger, it would function. Obviously that's a first world issue, but it is an issue. This here, it will fit as well. So the Festool, you know, I mean, this isn't probably the best, in my opinion, this isn't the best connection on either of these devices, because I've actually used them and then this, you know, this just like falls out, you know, which is pointless, right? And then you got dust spraying all over the place. So you got to be mindful when you're making a cut, especially if you're making a long cut, you know, do you have enough do you have, you know, you have to reduce the tension so that this doesn't just pull out and you get dust chips everywhere, because then what was the point of hooking the hose up in the first place, right? So that being said, after what I've spent, right, if I had to do it all over again, I probably would have just got the Festool. I'm just saying. But I don't regret buying either one of these or both of them, because if, you know, I was blessed enough to have the money, I would have a Festool sitting here right next to it. And I would use all three of them for different things. And I've actually used this saw to cut down something, you know, like if it's down on the floor, and then I'll turn around and use this one to do my precise cuts on the actual table and not miss a beat. not miss a beat, just continuously flow. And you know, I'm like that though. I'm, you know, one of those types of people that will use a tool to get this done, to get that done, to get whatever done. And so I'm not quite sure, like I said, so I'm not sure if this will actually, I'm not sure if this will influence somebody's purchase decision, but the reality of the matter is, I think track saws are super, you know, useful with, you know, straight line cuts, and, you know, that in line with the dust extraction to help you to kind of keep down the amount of dust particles that are in the air and assist with cleanup. It's super nice. Using this, you know, a regular circular saw, you're gonna have dust everywhere. You have to go back and clean it up. There's still gonna be some cleanup with these. Don't let anybody tell you that there's gonna be no dust. That's just not true. But the system of this, the fact that you don't have to worry about, the fact that it's been engineered in such a way as to where when you lay the track down, it's going to cut along that line. It's going to give you a straight line, a straight cut along that line, versus if you go buy an aftermarket straight edge and you use a regular circular saw, you have to, you know, always keep in mind what is the distance between the plate and the blade, so that you make sure you're cutting on the proper line. Now, that's something that you could do, but this, you know, you're paying for not having to think about that with this. You know, if you lay the track down at a certain location, that's where your cut's going to be. There's no extra math involved. There's no extra, you know, there's no guesstimation. It's just, you know, a precision, accurate, you know, outcome. Whether that's worth paying the extra money, because, you know, you're talking about, I think this was like $400 and something for the set that came with the saw. I believe, I can't remember if this came with 2 batteries or 1, but it also came with a 55 inch track. For this particular saw, I have the 55-inch track. I want to say the 42-inch track, and then I have the 110-inch track. For this particular one, I have I think they have as small as a 32 or 39-inch track. I have that one. I have the 55, and then I have the 118-inch track for this. I definitely prefer the longer track, one continuous track, over having multiple tracks that you put together. Not a fan of that, because, you know, it can introduce some degree of error. And from my understanding of my research, it seems that if you do want to have a connected rail system, the best one to get, which would be the Mafel, and the Mafel is like $1,200. It's pretty expensive for that particular track saw, but it's also the most powerful. And personally, I haven't seen even where to purchase it recently. A little bit more about my little track saw journey. I do have 2 up here. I'm looking up because I have them stored up over my head, the actual track saws, rails, some of them anyway. I do have 2 Festool tracks because I was actually anticipating buying a Festool track saw to do a comparison video. I mean, you know, times change, finances change, and all that, so I don't know if I'll ever get around to that. But if I do, you know, I do have a 55-inch Festool rail, and also, what is that other one? I don't know. It's the FS 800, and also the FS, I think that's the 1400, something like that. But I have both of those rails waiting if I do happen to get a Festool track saw. And we'll just have to see. So that's my long-winded talk or discussion about track saws, and, you know, what I think about them. I plan on doing maybe some more little small videos, because I have so many different, you know, cut videos around where I just record myself just using the track saw, because I think they're pretty cool. So hopefully I'll throw some of these videos in so that you can see that, because I know in this video I talked about them, but I didn't actually show them in action. And, you know, it's just because this is more of an impromptu video. I just kind of decided to talk about them. I've been meaning to talk about them for a long time, but, you know, I'm finally getting that out. And as I said, if you find any value from the video, I'm happy. And other than that, you have a great day. You be safe, and thanks for watching.